What's up, Domino community? My name's Lily Hevish, and today I'll be teaching you how to build a domino wall using the alternating technique. So get your dominoes and let's start building. I'm so excited to be showing you how to build different types of structures. In this series of tutorials, it's going to be all about domino walls. And in this one, you'll be learning how to make the alternating technique, which is one of the most common types of walls. Just for reference, there are three main types of domino walls: the alternating technique, the column technique, and the diagonal technique. All three of these options are great ways to build a wall, but some might be more useful than others depending on what you're building. So I'm going to be talking in depth on how to use each type of technique and when to use each technique, and even combining the techniques together to make even more complex structures. I'll leave a link right here if you want to check out all the other domino wall techniques, but for now, let's move on to the alternating technique. So we're going to start by placing sideways dominoes one domino height apart, and that's from edge to edge. So I'm going to place a domino here, and you can use another domino as sort of a measurement. See how from edge to edge it is one domino height. We don't want the dominoes to be too far apart. See how there's more than a domino height here? We want it to be within a domino height from edge to edge. So this is pretty simple. We're just going to continue the line. So after we have the first row of dominoes laid out and all measured, we're gonna place dominoes on top of these layers. We're gonna put one on here, and then on the other side, we're going to connect them like so. Now, it's really important with domino walls that you place the dominoes very precisely on the domino. We want them to be very flush with the edges, so it's all very symmetrical and square. We don't want dominoes that are leaning like this on a diagonal, or maybe we see a little bit of extra domino hanging off the edge, or even the domino leaning too far on the edge, because that could be risky and could end up knocking down by accident. So really be precise with where you place it. Make sure it is all very square, even in line, and then you should be good to go. So I'm just going to continue making the second row. And something interesting to note, I'm building this domino wall with a very specific hand position holding the domino. So you'll see I have my index finger and middle finger on one side and my thumb on the other side. And this will allow me to place the domino in a very safe way that it won't topple over by accident, because when I release my hand, I have a finger on either side that can catch it just in case it were to tip over. That's just one way you can hold the domino. I find that it's very comfortable and it feels safe when I'm building this way. There's domino techniques, but a lot of domino, I feel like, comes from building technique and how you're holding the domino and how you're being gentle with things, and focusing on that can really help you build in a way that is going to be much more relaxing and won't knock down by accident. Now, I'm holding the dominoes that are facing away from me using my middle finger on one side and my thumb on the opposite side. And I find that it's easier to place these dominoes when I'm directly in line with the domino. So if I'm building over here, I would try to avoid building it like reaching over like this. I would want to move my body over here so I'm directly in line. And in that way, you'll actually be able to build it a little bit more accurately, because you'll be able to see when a domino is out of place or is shifted over, maybe not as straight as it could be. So I do recommend shifting over to where you are and just very gently placing the domino as so. And again, we want to make sure that these dominoes are perfectly on the edge and they're all flush and square with the dominoes underneath it. And it's really easy to tell from this angle if you're right like in front of it, because if it's off, you'll be able to see extra dominoes underneath it, like right over here. So we're going to continue building on top, just the same thing. One thing I should note is that if you're holding the domino like this, we do have somewhat of an exposed area where if this domino fell inward, you wouldn't be able to catch it because there's nothing to catch it with your hand. Your hand is holding it on this side, but not towards the domino wall. So just keep in mind, if you are building something that's really risky and you don't want it to fail at all, I would recommend moving your body to over here. So you're looking at the domino wall this way, and then you can change your hand position so that you have your middle finger and index finger on one side and thumb on the other side to hold the domino on either side. So in that case, if I wanted to be really safe, I could go over here and then build this way. And the way that I know that a domino is placed correctly when I'm facing in this direction is because when I'm holding the domino like this, I can feel the domino underneath with my middle finger. So when I place this domino, for example, I can feel the corner of this pink domino and know where the edge is and can line that up with my finger. It's just by touch. And I would say it is good to check the wall from all sides as you're building, because then you can see if you're accidentally moving the dominoes like on an angle by accident because you're building on a certain angle. Like if I look at it from this direction, it's really easy to see when dominoes are out of place. So just keep an eye on it. If you need to adjust any dominoes as you're building, feel free to do so. Now that we're done with the third row, we can move on to the fourth row, which is where the domino wall starts to alternate. Now pay close attention to this row, because instead of putting the domino on the same side as the pink domino, we're gonna move it over to the other side where there's a gap of 3 dominoes underneath. See how there's 1, 2, 3 dominoes of a space underneath? And now we're just gonna place dominoes on the opposite side and keep alternating. Again, I'm moving my body with the dominoes so I'm not building them on an angle. Here we go. Now just double check your wall to make sure that all the dominoes are alternating and it is not the same as the second row that you've built. And now from here, it is really easy. You just keep repeating these rows. Every 4 layers, it'll repeat. So I'll continue building some more green dominoes. You can always tell if you've accidentally made the alternating technique wrong if you see a domino that's in line with another domino 2 rows underneath. So see here, this is in the same row. There's only 1 domino gap. We want the 3 domino gaps here. So just keep an eye on that. Now it's really important to note that for structures, you do have to build them to a certain height to make sure that they topple properly. A wall that maybe has very few rows, like even a wall of this size with 8 layers could be pretty risky just because there isn't enough dominoes to topple over and to keep the domino chain reaction going. Now this might depend on the types of dominoes that you're using, but for H5 domino creations, I do recommend making the wall at least 13 layers. That should work. 15 layers is a definite will work, but the taller you make the walls, the more reliable it will be. If you do decide to make a wall that is lower than 13 layers, it could work, but know that there is a chance that it could lock up because there isn't enough dominoes to topple on the wall and keep it going. Do some tests, whatever dominoes you're using, and even how neatly you build the domino wall will affect if this works or not. Precision is key, as well as making sure that the domino wall is high enough that it'll work. So I'm gonna continue this all the way up to 13 layers. All right, so this is 13 layers. This should work. If I want to be really safe, we could build it up to 15 layers and make it a guarantee. You'll see if I were to continue this up, it would make a 2D pyramid. Otherwise, it's just a simple domino wall, or even in the shape, this is technically a trapezoid. But if I do want to continue the wall outwards, it's just a matter of adding a domino to the edge and then continuing it up as so. This is looking really good. So now that you know how to make a 2D pyramid using the alternating technique, I'm gonna show you how to make the full wall by making it square on the side. So for this first domino right here on the edge, we're gonna put a vertical domino on top of it, making sure it's directly in line and very flush. And then we're gonna put another vertical domino on top of this pink domino on the second row. Again, make sure that looks all even. It's not hanging off the edge, it's not diagonal, it's perfectly in line with the domino underneath. So these vertical dominoes are sort of like platforms to continue the wall. So now we have another area to put a full horizontal domino on top. Be really careful when you're placing these dominoes because the vertical dominoes tend to shift or move over slightly when you place them. So be really gentle and just keep an eye on it. And now we can continue the wall, add another green one here and another one on the end. Now my friends and I, we like to call the end of this an end cap. So using the vertical dominoes, you could call this complete edge the end cap. Now as you build it higher, you'll have more dominoes to place gradually for each row. But you can continue the pattern. The end cap will repeat as well every 4 layers. So again, we'll put another vertical domino on the side right here and on the back on this pink domino. And now we continue it up. Awesome, I'm gonna make another end cap on this side and then we can knock it down. Now, I'd say the best way to knock down a domino wall is by taking out a domino about 5 or 6 layers from the top. If I were to take out a domino from the bottom, there would be too much weight on top of it that it wouldn't actually topple over. And if I take out, the second row from the top, there's not enough dominoes on top of it to fall into the structure to make a chain reaction. So make sure it's about 5 to 6 layers below. In this case, I'm going to take out this vertical domino right here. And the vertical domino is nice because it's sort of the weakest point of the domino wall. It's much easier to take out a vertical domino than it is to take out a horizontal domino. Not that you couldn't take out this domino, for example, but this one will be a little bit more reliable. Now, you can technically knock down walls with small to large sets or field starters, but you just need to make sure that if the wall is too tall, something that's really light, like this, might not knock it over. So in that case, we would have to use string and knock it down, or use something heavier like books or DVDs to knock down a structure of a really tall size. So I'm going to take this domino off and tape the end of the string. And before cutting the string, I'm just going to quickly measure how long I need to make the string. I think I'm going to place this field starter right about here. In that case, the string needs to be a little bit longer than the distance because we want to leave some slack to make sure that there's enough room for this field starter to fully tip over. All right, cut it right here. And then we can tape the other end of the string to the field starter. And now we can just tape the domino like so. And now we can place the vertical domino very carefully. So now let's continue the domino wall and finish it up. There we go. This is the domino wall using the alternating technique. Let's knock it down. So if we watch this back in slow motion, the domino line falls, which triggers the field starters, and that pulls the string, which knocks out the vertical domino. And then once that domino is taken out, there's no more support on top of it, so those dominoes fall over as well. And then that hits more dominoes in the wall to fall out of place, and then that just continues the domino effect. A couple more things to note about the alternating technique. I tend to use this method when I'm making something that I know needs to be a little bit more stable, especially if it's really tall. It does tend to stay in place a little bit better structurally compared to the column technique or the diagonal technique. The alternating technique is probably the best method for making a square end cap as well. All of the dominoes like evenly line up on the end cap, so it probably looks the nicest in terms of making a square edge on a domino wall. Generally, I'd say the alternating technique is good for making domino walls that are just straight walls. Using this technique for a wavy domino wall will make it a little bit uneven because the spacing will kind of get off and then it'll be hard to place the dominoes. Just again, make sure you are precise with your placement of the dominoes and make sure you're using at least 13 layers to make sure that it'll be reliable. But again, depends on your dominoes. Do some tests before you do it in a real setup. I wish you all the best with your projects. If you need high quality dominoes, I do recommend my very own H5 domino creations, which are made in collaboration with Spin Master. You can get them at hevish5.com/buydominoes or the link in the description. I will caution, you want to be careful using other types of dominoes because they might not be properly weighted or precise enough to build tall structures, especially with wooden dominoes where every domino is slightly different. Like, you really want to make sure if you are making tall structures, I do recommend professional H5 domino creations. Definitely make sure to check out this playlist for more domino tutorials, as well as the column technique tutorial and the diagonal wall tutorial, because there are many ways to make a domino wall and you definitely want to check out all of them to decide which technique is best for what you're building. Now, my question for you is, when do you use the alternating technique versus other techniques? When is using this method necessary or maybe just preferred? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. I want to give a shout out to our featured community member, Domino Legend. This is the spirit that I love for the collaborative community compilations. Thank you, Domino Legend. And as always, I'm Lily Hevish, and keep on building.